How did the Japanese get through summers every bit as brutal as ours, in a country hotter and stickier than most of America, for hundreds of years before anybody had electricity? They worked out a whole set of tricks for it, and the strange part is that they work just as well in a three-bedroom house in Ohio as they do in an old house in Kyoto. Heat behaves the same everywhere. It does not care what country your house is in. My name is Richard Nakamura. I grew up in a Japanese house in Ohio that never once owned an air conditioner, and I spent 30 years after that hauling the machines out of other people's houses. Today, I am going to give you 7 ways the Japanese cooled a home with no electricity at all, most of them free or close to it, and every single one backed by the actual physics. You do not have to do all 7. Pick the one that fixes your worst problem, get it working, then add the next. Let's get into it. Number 1 is the one that surprises people the most, and it is to shade your windows from the outside. The Japanese hung a thin screen of reed or bamboo called a sudare on the outside of the window. Now you might be wondering how a thin sheet of dried grass cools down a whole house. You have to understand one thing about heat and windows. The sunlight comes through the glass first, and only turns into heat once it is already inside the room, bouncing around off your floor and your furniture. Once it is in, it is in. Blinds and curtains on the inside are too late to the party. The Department of Energy actually put a number on this. Shade a south-facing window from the outside and you block up to 65% of that heat. Do it on a west-facing window, the one that catches the worst of the afternoon sun, and you block up to 77%. Close the blinds on the inside instead, and you stop maybe 45%, because by then, the heat is already in the room and the blinds are just shading your eyes. You can buy a roll-up reed or bamboo outdoor shade at any hardware store for $20 to $40 a window and hang it on a couple of hooks over the frame in one afternoon. I am not going to lie and tell you it is $5. But 77% of the heat off your worst window for the price of a couple of pizzas is the best deal in this whole video. Number 2 costs you nothing but a bucket of water. You know that cool air that comes up off the sidewalk right after a summer rain, that smell of wet stone, that drop in temperature you feel down at your ankles? The Japanese worked out how to do that on purpose. Any evening they felt like it, just by sprinkling water on the ground outside the door. They have done it since the 1600s, and they call it uchimizu. It works because of evaporation. When that water turns to vapor, it has to pull energy from somewhere, and it pulls it as heat, straight out of the ground and the air just above it. It is the very same thing that makes sweat cool your skin. Researchers at a university over in the Netherlands measured it a few years back and found the air cooled by about 1.5 degrees up at head height and as much as 6 degrees right down at the ground. And they found the catch. You have to do it in the evening or the early morning, and in the shade if you can, because at high noon, the sun just boils the water off before it can do any real work. So in the cool of the evening, take a watering can, or the hose, or even the leftover water from the bath or the dish rinse, and throw it across your driveway, your patio, the walk by your front door. Within a few minutes, you get that cool, wet stone air right where you are sitting, and your kids will feel it before you do. Number 3, picture a stuffy bedroom on a July night. You crack one window open, you stand next to it, and you feel almost nothing. The air just sits there. Nearly everybody makes the same mistake. One window open and the whole rest of the house shut up tight. A single opening has nowhere for the air to go. So whatever little breeze wanders in just curls around by the window and dies. The old Japanese houses were built with sliding paper panels, so a family could open a clean path straight through the house whenever they wanted. Building scientists call it cross-ventilation, and the difference is not close. With one window, useful air moves maybe 2.5 times the height of your ceiling into the room, and then it quits. Open a second window on a different wall, and now the air has somewhere to go, and it will pull all the way across a room 5 times the ceiling height, deep. That comes straight out of the building design guides. So open 2 windows on different walls of the same room, not just the one. If the room only has windows on one wall, prop the door open and crack a window at the far end of the house to pull the air through. You will feel a dead, stale room come alive in about 10 seconds, and you did not turn on a single thing. Number 4 is for those dead, still evenings when there is no wind at all to work with. The old houses often had a tiny shaded garden tucked right into the middle of the floor plan. That shaded little pocket of ground stayed cooler than the rest of the house, and that small difference in temperature was enough to pull the warm air out of the whole place all by itself, with no wind at all. It works because warm air is lighter than cool air, so it rises. Open a low window on the cool, shaded side of your house and a high window upstairs on the hot, sunny side, and the warm air pours out the top while it drags cool air in the bottom to replace it. It feeds itself, a slow, steady draft on a completely still night. The builders call it the stack effect. You do not need a garden in your living room to use it. Just open a basement or ground floor window on the shady side, and an upstairs or attic window on the sunny side, morning and evening. If your house has a staircase or an attic vent up top, this one works beautifully, and it costs you nothing. Number 5 has nothing to do with moving air at all. It is about what your skin is actually touching. Lie down on a hot night on polyester sheets, and by 2 in the morning you are stuck to them, clammy and miserable. And here is the thing, that is not really the heat. That is your own sweat with nowhere to go, sealed right against you by the fabric. The traditional Japanese floor, the tatami mat, is woven from a rush grass over a straw core, and it does the exact opposite. Natural plant fibers are full of tiny pores, so they drink the moisture right out of the air and off your skin, and then let it go again later when things dry out. Synthetics like polyester repel water, so the damp just sits there, trapped against you, and makes the room feel hotter than the thermometer says it is. And how hot a room feels is driven mostly by the humidity, not the number on the wall. A tatami floor can pull liters of moisture out of a room and hand it back later, and the very same thing happens with cotton sheets, a linen curtain, a wool rug. You do not need to lay down a straw floor to get it. Next time you are at the store, swap your polyester sheets for cotton or linen. Linen pulls moisture the fastest of the lot, which is exactly why hot countries have leaned on it for thousands of years. That is a laundry aisle purchase, not a remodel, and the first night on linen almost feels like cheating. Number 6 is the big brother of that first one, the outside shade, but at the scale of the whole house. Stand outside an old Japanese house on a summer afternoon and look at the wall. The roof hangs way out past the wall, much further than it does on an American house, and there is a hard shadow line cutting across the siding. Above the line, the wall is baking in the sun. Below it, in the shade of that deep eave, the wall is still cool to the touch. They call that eave the Noki, and they sized it to the sun on purpose, so it blocks the high summer sun that beats straight down, but still lets in the low winter sun that comes in almost sideways. And a wall that never gets hot in the first place is a wall that is not radiating that heat back into your bedroom half the night. Now you cannot go rebuilding your roof, and you do not have to. A retractable awning or a simple shade frame over your south and west windows does the same job, and it is the same up to 77% off your worst windows the Department of Energy measured for any outside shade. No permit, no contractor, up in a day. They even note that a lighter colored awning reflects a little more sun and does a touch better. And number 7 ties the whole thing together, and it is more about timing than anything you can buy. On a summer evening, once the sun was finally down and the air outside had dropped below the air inside, the Japanese would throw the whole house wide open, every window and door, and go sit out on the porch in the cool. Building scientists today call it night flushing, and it is the most powerful free move in the entire book. You let that cool night air pour through and carry out all the heat the house soaked up during the day. Then, at first light, before it warms back up outside, you shut it all, windows and curtains both, and you trap that coolness down in the walls and the floors and the furniture, and it carries you through most of the next day. Now, I have to be straight with you here, because this one depends on where you live. Out in the dry country, the inland west, places like Phoenix and Denver and Sacramento, where the night drops 15 or 20 degrees below the day, this one habit alone will change your whole summer. Down on the humid coast, Houston, New Orleans, Miami, where the night stays warm and sticky, you will get less out of it, and I would rather tell you that now than oversell it to you. A $3 indoor-outdoor thermometer shows you the moment the outside drops below the inside, and that is when you open up. Close it all again at sunrise. That is the whole trick. So look at what those old houses actually pulled off. Comfortable through some of the hottest, wettest summers anywhere on Earth, with no machine at all. Just shade and water and moving air and the right cloth against your skin, and knowing the moment to open the house and the moment to shut it. And every one of these works just as well in a ranch house in Texas as it does in Tokyo, because the heat does not care what country it is in. Do not go trying to do all 7 tomorrow. That is the wrong way at it. Pick the one that hits your worst problem right now. If your west windows are cooking the living room every afternoon, start with the outside shade. If the bedroom is stuffy at night, start with cross ventilation. If you wake up at 2 in the morning soaked through, change your sheets. Run one until you are doing it without even thinking, and then add the next. By the end of the summer, you will have a house that shrugs off the heat in a way it never did before, and your air conditioner will be running a whole lot less. And you will see it right there on the bill. Tell me down in the comments which one you are going to try first. And if your mother or your grandmother had a way of beating the heat that I did not name here, put it down there and share it. Because those little inherited tricks disappear the second nobody bothers to write them down. I read every one. My grandmother used to tell me about mottainai. It means nothing good should ever be wasted. Not the thing in your hands, and not the knowing of how to keep it.